I now look to James Lamming, Secretary's Committee, Exeter College, to open the case for the opposition of this motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, you might be a little surprised to see me here tonight. As my friend told me earlier, seeing a union hack defend upright and fair democracy is about as common as seeing a turkey defend Christmas. But tonight I'm speaking from my own personal experience, as I told him. As I found out to my own expense last term, democracy is not for sale, not even the Oxford Union elections, and not even if you spend your entire student loan and most of your overdraft on bribes. Believe me, I've tried. Now, I understand completely that democracy is not now as popular as once it was. The successes of Trump and Leave and the surge of populism across Eastern Europe has left a bitter taste in many of our mouths, including my own. But if you feel like I do, I would implore you not to take this out on the result of tonight's motion. Because money is not the problem, and democracy is not for sale. What Lord Tyler did not mention was that Remain actually outspent Leave, and that Hillary outspent Trump, but the results speak for themselves. Because those results were not about money, and neither are the vast majority of elections. They're about voter beliefs, voter values, and most importantly, the candidates and the causes themselves. But before I begin my speech proper, it falls on me to introduce tonight's proposition. We have just had the privilege of hearing from Lord Tyler. You may have noted that Lord Tyler is not in fact a student anymore. He is, however, a former MP, a member of the finest college in Oxford, Exeter, and most importantly, a life member of the Oxford Union. When he is not campaigning for electoral reform, you can find Lord Tyler in that most oh-so-fair and democratic institution, the House of Lords. Second to speak will be Alexandra Runswick, the director of Unlock Democracy. Unlock Democracy is a campaign dedicated to tracking and eliminating the power of big money in UK politics. She's taken a break from investigating the Conservatives to be with us tonight, which will explain the shiny new Mercedes she turned up in. Last, but by no means least, will be Cenk Uygur. It is Uygur, I'm sorry. He explained it to me earlier, but I couldn't quite get it. He is the founder of the Young Turks, which is the largest online news network in the world. As an undergraduate, Cenk was a Republican. He criticised feminism, big government, and a women's right to choose. However, he is now an advocate for Bernie Sanders and a staunch critic of the Iraq War. I'm hoping he performs a similar U-turn on tonight's motion. Mr. President, these are your speakers, and they are most welcome. I'm sorry, I'm not that bad, am I? But let us turn back to the motion at hand. I am sure that the proposition tonight will try to convince you with individual instances of democracy gone wrong. But no matter how many examples they will give, they cannot prove tonight's motion. Because I think if all of us tonight in this room will agree that democracy can go wrong, it can be corrupted, it has in the past, and it almost certainly will in the future, as Lord Tyler's pointed out earlier. However, it is certainly not the case that democracy, by its very nature, can be bought and sold, as tonight's motion suggests. I just don't buy that, if you'll pardon the pun. The proposition have conflated the agreed fact that there is a lot of money in politics, and perhaps even too much. That's a debate for another day. And then they have leapt to the conclusion that because of this, democracy must be necessarily for sale. It is just a leap too far for me, because I do not agree that they have considered each step in the way. I do not think that democracy is necessarily for sale. Because the founding principle of our democracy is one person, one vote. Whether you are born poor or rich, religious or atheist, male or female, we all receive that same inalienable right, the right to vote. The direction of history is clear. From the Magna Carta to the extension of the franchise to women, the right of the people to choose their own representative is not, nor ever will be, subject to monetary value. And no amount of money can buy or sell your right to elect and remove your representative as you see fit. So let's extend the motion tonight to its logical extreme, if it were true. Can any party or any view, no matter how odious and no matter how morally reprehensible, elect itself if it has enough cash? Is it for lack of money that the BNP does not now hold a Commons majority? If UKIP had a greater bank balance, would they be their opposition even? Do we really think so little of the average voter as to believe that their votes go merely to the highest bidder? Are any of us here planning on selling our votes in the general election? I would venture that we are not. And not just because the penalty of bribery carries a very hefty charge, as I found out last term, but also because we all share a sense of fairness and justice when it comes to democracy. So if, like me, you do not think that any amount of money can accomplish this, then you must necessarily agree that democracy is not for sale in any meaningful sense. Because no matter how corrupt a single government could ever be, we, the electorate, retain the right to boot them out if they do not represent us, or if we believe that they have been sold to corporate interests, as Lord Tyler suggested earlier. But if you cannot buy this right, then you cannot really buy democracy, because we can remove the current Conservative government if we thought that Labour were a better suggestion. I would suggest that we don't, but... The first speaker tonight, Lord Tyler, briefly touched on the subject of lobbying when he talked about powerful special interests. But what he has omitted to mention is that lobbying is not just good for our democracy, but it is necessary for its preservation. Because if we accept that our MPs are not some omniscient deities, but that in fact they are just like us, and they cannot be experts in every field of legislation, then we want them to be exposed to different views, to different arguments. The views of the people, the views of the academics, and yes, the views of business. But if you ban lobbying, then you are going to ban, or at least make a lot harder, this exchange of views. Because consider what lobbying actually is. You are lobbying when you ask your local MP for more park benches. You are lobbying when you sign an online petition. You are lobbying when you ask your local council for better school food. At its best, and yes?
You don't agree that's a sophistry. The fact is that certain businesses and interests do have more money to lobby, and there's no lobbyists for the homeless, there's no lobbyists for those that have no money to pay for lobbyists, so that isn't properly...
I'm glad you brought that up, because it is not only big business that lobbies. In fact, charities, talking about those of the homeless, or those without money, or those with cancer, or the most vulnerable in our society, have lobbyists just the same. Cancer Research UK, Oxfam, Save the Children, all spend a vast amount of their budget on lobbying the government for more funding, or for different laws, or for different circumstances, just as business does. And in fact, there are very strict lobbying laws on how much you can spend on lobbying, and they must all be revealed in the lobbying register.
Point of information,
yes.
No, there aren't very strict rules. We have one of the weakest lobbying registers in the world, of any country that has a register, and the in-house lobbyists that you just referred to in the charity sector would not in fact be covered by the lobbying register.
Fair enough. Better sit down now. But perhaps the most contentious issue tonight in this debate will be campaign financing, as Lord Tyler has mentioned, and as I am sure my two fellow opposition speakers will go on to later. I will leave the topic mostly for them, but let me just say this. The more that is spent on any campaign, and the greater the voters' knowledge of the choices, and the evidence bears this out. If both you and I can spend more money on leaflets, on door knocking, on TV ads, then I can tell you, the voters, more about my values, and you can tell the voters more about your values. And if you were going to vote on an incredibly important issue, would you rather have more information, or would you rather have less information? Ladies and gentlemen, tonight you'll be voting with your feet. But when you are voting, and hopefully for the opposition, walk out the no door tonight, I hope you remember that nobody can buy your vote and that your vote is not for sale at any price. Except, of course, for me. So please, £10 a vote. I beg you to oppose the motion.